What Rachel didn't tell you is like, I saw her again today and I brought her book again and she signed it, but not again, Mario, so there we go. Okay, so, hola, soy Mario. I'm a staff content designer at Shopify. I'm also the founder of Content Design in España. But I'm also a dad. I also love cumbia music. I'm a fan of stand-up comedy. I've never tried it before, so maybe one day. And if you know me, I'm a huge fan of tacos. So if you know any good place here in London, hit me up right after this. So a lot of us have been doing this, let's go back in time type of thing. So I thought, might as well, why not? 2018, the state of content design in Spain was this. I'd been working as well, we used to call it UX writer back then, content designer, for a while. And the reality is, I was tired. I was frustrated. But most of all, I felt really, really alone. Because the thing is, I did know other content designers, but it was mostly on online communities, right? Basically on the States. Some of us here in Europe, a few in Spain. But the reality is their context was so different from mine. A little bit what Nicole was telling you. Because remember, content design in Spain. And I genuinely thought, I'm the only one going through this. Like, why is this happening only to me, right? But then, I was having a lunch with a friend of mine, and she looked me square in the eye and she said something around the lines of like, you know you can't be the only one thinking about this, right? And then she started to explain to me about this thing about the false uniqueness effect, which is this cognitive bias that we all have, where we think the problems that we have, the situations that we're going through, are only related to us. And that's not true. It's a false uniqueness effect. Because people want to feel seen. They want to feel supported. And this is my favorite one. We like to rant. But they want to also be able to find their people. People that have the same context, that share those struggles, that have those same problems, or that they have the same wins, right? That they don't have to explain over and over and over again. But the problem is, building a community, if you've ever tried it, or if you've ever been a part of a community, it takes time. And it also takes a huge, huge effort. And lots of energy. That, being honest, I did not have at that time. So, we are content designers, and we all know what it means to be thinking about the same thing for days and days and days and days and days and days, right? So after having that conversation with my friend, I started thinking about this thing that my mom used to tell us, right? So, and I realized this morning when I was going through the slides, it's like, this is the last photo I've had with my mom before she passed away like last year. So if I start tearing up, bear with me. My mom always worked with her hands. She used to do stained glass for a living for years and years and years. And she basically worked on either big houses or churches in small towns around where I lived in Guadalajara, Mexico. And my mom was a force of nature. She had a really small crew. She loved working with her hands. She loved working with the artisans, local sourced, everything. It was amazing. And every single time that she would build a church, and I'm talking about like churches that had like 60 meters. I don't know how much that is in feet, sorry. Like huge, beautiful stained glass windows for like these very tiny, tiny churches. Every single time that she would finish a project, she would gather up the whole town and they would make a fiesta, they would make a party. But the beauty of it is like, you would see the mayor of the town sweeping the floor. You would see the priest bringing in the flowers. You would see the people around the community putting the flowers, the kids trying to arrange the tables and the seating. And like the whole town or the whole place was really into it. And for me, it was mesmerizing because I was like, Mom, you don't know these people from anybody. from anything. They just see you come in with your crew and working and like doing stuff and like doing these beautiful pieces of art. And you get to rally them every single time. How do you do that? Like, how does that work? How do you get a whole bunch of people that don't know each other to work together for something? And I'll never forget the moment that she just smiled and she would tell me, mijo, aquí todas jalamos parejo, which is the Mexican version of we're all in this together. And that's when it hit me. Because communities are about people. People that come together to help support each other. And at that time, I just needed to find a way to start. I knew what I had to do, but I couldn't do it by myself. So I started going online. I started finding people that lived in Barcelona, where I was living at the time. And I said, you know what, let's get together. Let's go grab a beer. Because let's face it, no good story ever starts with they were having a salad. So this right here, we have Blanca, Pilar, Rich, Sergio, and myself. And that little notebook there, that's the beginning of this beautiful story. We got together and we decided, we planned, and we designed the community that we wanted for, that we needed, and that would be appropriate to the context that we had at the time. Remember? Big hay wheel. We were super clear on the fact that we needed to start small because we all had our full-time jobs. We had no idea what we were getting into. And we needed to take it. We also had really clear that we wanted to create this safe space, right? Because we were all having these problems back at our individual teams where we didn't have the same context. People didn't quite understand what was happening to us. So we needed to have that safe space where we could like really be ourselves and really, if we needed to rant, if we needed to like go for some advice, whatever we needed, that was going to be our space. Whatever happened there, it was for us to understand, it was for us to help each other. And we also really had this motto that was zero stress, right? Baby steps. And I know that's not true because all these things are stressful, but every single time that we tried to do something and life got in the way, work got in the way, whatever, it was like, hey, it's okay. We're building this. Let's take it baby steps, step by step. And most importantly, we were there to give each other support and hype each other up because, again, as content designers, we all feel this, we've been mentioning, right? Like, we're frauds, they're gonna catch up onto us. Like, so there's times where you need other folks to not just like be there for you, but actually hype you up. And that was one of the best parts of this whole thing. Because the goal that we knew we wanted to have was actually give back to that community, right? Provide some value to these folks that were at least at a local level looking for something or a space like this. And that's how Content Design España started. And the funny thing about this is that's a monkey on a typewriter. We own that because the story comes, I had a PM that says like, why do we need all of you folks? We could have monkeys on typewriters eventually getting the job done. That was way before AI. That was a horrible thing to say, I know. But when you're a content designer and you're capable of taking those struggles, owning them, and helping you empower, and like, why not laugh at yourself a little bit? That makes things a little bit easier, right? That sets the tone for the place that you want to be at. So what kind of felt like a support group at the beginning, again, beers and rants, right? Turned into a local community of practice with a huge impact. We were starting to have meetups. We were starting to bring more people in. We were starting to like tell other people what content design one actually was, right? And how they could have access to this. So we started going around different companies and sharing what we knew, right? At the time, is like, you have to remember 2018, there were not that very many books. We didn't have any courses available. We had some posts, we had some podcast episodes, but that was pretty much it. We had to do the work and try to compile all that information. which was in English, and then try to translate it into Spanish, and then try to translate it into our context. So there was a whole of information gathering to bring it closer to home. To be able to guide folks to discover and transition into content design. It was crazy. We were doing these meetups with folks that came from architecture, that came from like graphic design, that came from marketing, that came from legal. People were like, okay, so what's this new thing that we're hearing about? That we know that it's a way to also like transition into working at tech? Because when you are not in tech and you start, this is a great way to start, right? And we were also lucky enough by building these connections, this community, to start giving access to folks, free access to folks, actually, for people that were shaping the discipline at the time, right? So we had Serena, we had Michael and Andy, we had Scott. They had just released their books. And we were giving these folks access to that information for free, which any other way they wouldn't be able to. So bringing these folks closer to the people that were starting was a giant effort. But it was all because we wanted to help out, right? This was a labor of love. We were not making any money out of this, and we're still not making money out of this. We're trying to help each other out. And then stuff started to gain traction, right? And it was starting to get real because we were starting to help companies understand what our craft was. So companies were calling us out. We would go there, we would meet with their design teams, we would meet with their, sometimes their leadership team, and explain what content design was, how they could embed it into their teams, how to work with content designers to get that interesting rolling. And it got to a point where, well, we were the ones that established what content design is in Spain. We even had, this was 2020, a super interesting investigation that we rolled out with what was the actual state of content design in Spain at that time. And we were able to present it at several companies and everything. So it came from like a group of people that have never met each other, having some beers, to like actually establishing a discipline in a country. And from there, we thought, okay, so everything that we've learned, all of the mistakes that we've done, all of the templates that we now have that work for our context, let's see how we can share with others. So we started like expanding that network with other folks in Europe and Latin America and helping them either set up their own communities or growing their communities with things that we have learned. And then we started having like inter-community meetups and stuff like that. That was super helpful for all of us to learn from each other. And one of my favorite parts of this is we even empowered community folks to like find and get jobs, right? The moment that you are capable of helping someone find a job, you have impact on their livelihood. For me, that's brilliant. So every single time that I would get text messages like this, that just made me super happy. Because in the end, this community gave people a sense of belonging and a place to find their people. Because if there's one thing that I've learned from the global, international, worldwide, whatever we want to call it, content design community, is that aquí todas jalamos parejo. Gracias.